If they are in a suburban area or region, where are they going to go? That limits them even more so. I want to emphasize, though, that the workers that I represent, including those that have been trafficked, don't necessarily have the extreme form of exploitation that you've seen in the film. It doesn't necessarily result in physical violence, severe torture, etc. Most cases often are psychological in nature, and a lot of us advocates use the term the phrase climate of fear that exists in the workplace. And when you're operating in a household, a private household in the middle of a suburban neighborhood, that climate of fear can be all the more exacerbated because you don't know who to go to, you don't know where to go to. If you are a recent immigrant, you don't know who to call, how to call anyone for assistance or help. So I just want to emphasize that point that a lot of these workers experience a lot of fear, not necessarily because of any kind of physical threats that might have come to them, but more about threats made to call the police on them, or threats made to send them back to their countries of origin, or threats made to their loved ones abroad, or any number of different ways in which that kind of control can be exaggerated. I also just wanted to address, as mentioned in the film, the situation of domestic workers in diplomat households. The way our laws operate, especially on the immigration side of for these workers who come in to work in diplomat households are bound by our immigration laws to only work for that particular employer, diplomat employer, under like A3 visas or G5 visas. This kind of system is very similar to the immigration rules that we have, the immigration laws that we have for guest workers who come in on particular H-2B visas or H-2A visas, agricultural workers who come in to do quote-unquote unskilled work or work in a variety of industries where theoretically U.S. employers can't find domestic, like U.S. Domestic workers to come do that work. There's what's called a lack of portability. And basically what happens is that these workers, once they come in to work for that particular employer, whether it be a diplomat employer or not, are bound to that employer. And if they aren't happy with the working conditions, aren't happy with the pay, unhappy for any reason, maybe the employer isn't paying what they agreed to or isn't giving them the type of hours that they agreed to, the worker's only alternative really is to go back to their country of origin, which might be impossible for a variety of different reasons. And so that exaggerates the already very wide chasm that exists between the employer and the employee. And that kind of dramatic difference in power and dynamic renders the worker that much more vulnerable and makes them that much more vulnerable to being exploited or trafficked or otherwise harmed in some way, shape, or form. That's what I think. Just a final point that I wanted to make in terms of representing these domestic workers who do take care of the children and cook and clean. These workers do make the employer's work possible because they are taking care of everything inside the household. And the fact that it's historically been a very undervalued form of work, historically hasn't been paid for, and even currently in the household, when you think of who is the primary caretaker of a household, it's the woman. There are inherent gender issues that we need to take into account. And I think when we think about revaluing women's work, we need to take that into account.
Thank you, Ida. And Next, we'll be hearing from Nahar Alam, who has been an organizer in the United States and in Bangladesh for almost 20 years. She is a former domestic worker and a domestic violence survivor. Nahar co-founded Andolan in 1998 to organize low-wage South Asian women workers. Since 2008, Nahar has been a community health worker with the Center for the Study of Asian American Health at NYU Medical Center. Nahar has received the Susan B. Anthony Award from NOW in 1996, an award from the Petra Foundation in 1998, the Union Square Award from the Fund for the City of New York in 2001, and as a Revaluing fellow, was a Revaluing fellow at Columbia University in 2004. From Nahar, we'll be hearing some of her experiences as a worker and how that drove her to found Andolan, as well as anything else she wants to tell us about.
Thank you. I want to just correct a little bit. Rapson Fellowship.
Thank you.
From Columbia. I'm sorry. Before I start talking, I feel like this room is a little bit hot and people may be a little sleepy also. I want to just honor my member who were the one in the front working and courage enough to now in a building now. I would be asking my members to stand up and show them respect that like they are here. They have so much courage to be here, part of this group. So I would ask Andolan members, each volunteer also, to just stand up. My husband, including, who is so much supportive of Andolan work. And my daughter, you can see, like when she was in the belly, she was asking me a question. I had a demonstration here, and that's just next to this building. And she was, at that time, she was asking me where I was that time. So she's here with me right now. So just I want to honor her. Thank you so much. And being here, I feel so warm, not the weather, but for my heart. Because it's so much supportive, so much support is here. So, founder of this organization is fortunate for me, I think. The time I would say, I can just start from a little bit of, my background, and then you will realize not only myself, so many others are from that kind of. You hear the sisters. This is almost similar kind of thing. So South Asian women also come here. It's not like for graduated, not for have a happy life and then briding life, because there's behind is a reason to come here. So my own story. So I will read a little bit of this. Own story begins in Bangladesh. When I was 13 years old, I'm gonna just because I honored my husband. Definitely, this our culture. We don't want to talk about these issues. But my husband is, I would say, was a wonderful man who supports my work. That's why, it's not only like me. Like almost all members, they know him better than me. That's kind of where they, deal with him. But I'm talking about my past life. I was forced to drop out of school and marry a man who's older, much older than me. My husband was a police officer. He was extremely abusive. It took me years to escape from him and to come to the United States. I had always thought that United States was a place where anyone could get a job and be safe. But I think that it depends on who you are. I'm a woman, an immigrant, a Muslim, and when I came to this country, I didn't speak enough English. You heard my sister, she said she didn't speak English. And that's a problem. I worked as a garment factory. And then I worked as a domestic worker. Garment factory, the money I got it, $35 for 15 days I work. That time I had to spend $300 from my pocket for the rent. I suffered with both jobs. No getting paid properly and being abused.